So good morning, everyone. Welcome to Knox Virtual Sunday Worship Service. And also, welcome to our new worship and sermon series, starting today on the book of Exodus. I titled it as the Ultimate Wilderness Survival Guide, How to Thrive in a Pandemic Wilderness Journey and Beyond. And at the end of last Sunday in my sermon, I spoke a little bit about that and preview of the series. And let me just recap briefly. So when we find ourselves in crisis situation like we are in, we can get quite overwhelmed and fearful of our uncertainty. And we tend to be reactive and become tunnel vision. And that's not helpful. So instead of reacting to the situation from a crisis frame of mind, we want to reframe our situation and our identity on much broader and higher plane of existence, kind of switching our mind process from under the situation to over and beyond the immediate matters at hand. You see, the Exodus event is the one single most important event for all of Israel for many, many years. For more than 3,000 years, the Israel people framed their identity and patterned their life journey with that of Exodus event and people. And they gave them strength, endurance, and hope in most horrible situations in their life journey. And I'm certain that the lessons we learn from the Exodus journey will help us to navigate through our own wilderness journey and will help us to not only to survive, but to thrive. Now, every Sunday during this series, I will be asking a question at the beginning of a worship service to connect us with the theme of that Sunday. So, the question for today, as we begin our worship service and the series for today is that, what is that one thing? What is that one thing or a few essential things that you cannot live without in your wilderness journey? So let us worship. The peace of Christ is with you.
And also with you.
So this morning we light this Christ candle. The light shines in the world. The light that was in the beginning was with God and formed the universe and was the life source of all. The light of the risen Christ shines in our world, and the death could not overcome it. We also light this candle of global concerns as we remember many who are going through difficulties, especially for all those who are grieving the loss of their loved ones in Nova Scotia through shootings last Sunday. We want to remember them and also for all those who are facing their own challenging wilderness journey with facing injustice and violence and wars and disasters. And we want to lift our prayers and let them know that they are not alone.
Okay, Richard, it's time to go. God is calling us from the wilderness.
Well, I'm not ready yet. I need to pack for the journey.
Come on, Richard, we don't have much time. Just take what you can.
Wait, please don't hurry. Don't rush me. I have so much stuff to pack.
Come on, Richard. Don't pack so heavy. Well, we're leaving now.
Wait! wait for me.
When God calls us from the wilderness journey, we've got to go now. Come, let us journey with God.
Come, let us worship. We will sing, We Are Pilgrims.
The reading today is from the book of Exodus, chapter 12, verses 33 to 41 and 50 to 51. The Egyptians urged the people to hasten their departure from the land, for they said, "We shall all be dead." So the people took their dough before it was leavened, with their kneading bowls wrapped up in their cloaks on their shoulders. The Israelites had done as Moses told them. They had asked the Egyptians for jewelry of silver and gold, and for clothing, and the Lord had given the people favor in the sight of the Egyptians, so that they let them have what they asked, and so they plundered the Egyptians. The Israelites journeyed from Ramses to Succoth, about 600,000 men on foot, besides children. A mixed crowd also went up with them, and livestock in great numbers, both flocks and herds. They baked unleavened cakes of the dough that they had brought out of Egypt. It was not leavened, because they were driven out of Egypt and could not wait, nor had they prepared any provisions for themselves. The time that the Israelites had lived in Egypt was 430 years. At the end of 430 years, on that very day, all companies of the Lord went out from the land of Egypt. And verses 50 and 51. All the Israelites did just as the Lord had commanded Moses and Aaron. That very day, the Lord brought the Israelites out of the land of Egypt, company by company. Listen to what the Spirit is saying to the church.
Thanks be to God.
El Shaddai,
So how do you define essential service? Now, in the middle of March, the World Health Organization declared COVID-19 crisis a pandemic crisis and warned the countries around the globe to brace and prepare for its impact. And Canada and BC governments ordered the social distancing and the lockdown of the non-essential services and businesses and works for a period of time and only offer the essential services until further notice. So how do we define and determine the essential services? Well, according to our government, the essential services include hospitals, police force, and firefighters, grocery stores, and big and large, small and all different sizes, government workers, not every government workers, but those people mostly who are working on providing essential, like basic service to our homes, like utility services like that. And of course, all those who provide with internet and mobile phones and the service related to social media. Maybe I'm missing some here and there, right? But you can fill in that rest, right? And that's it. That's very much it. Essential services. So, which means that no movie theaters, no sports, no NHL, no NBA finals, and no weddings, no funerals, no birthday celebration, no cruise liners, no flights, no schools, no Tim Hortons, and of course no Starbucks, which really hurts me, and no religious service on site. In other words, most non-essential services like church services have all gone virtual, like what we've been doing for more than a month now. Now, it doesn't mean that non-essential services are not important, just that they are considered to be not so essential during this pandemic crisis era, and might even be considered to be dangerous to public health, where there are more than 10 people in a confined area for more than 30 minutes. It's a danger zone. So I have only 3 people here, myself, Colleen, and Kevin, the essential personnel providing a non-essential service to essential people. That's you, folks, virtually. So for more than a month, this pandemic crisis and lockdown have stripped us to a bare minimum, like just basic services for us to cope and survive during this period. And it feels like we're all of a sudden thrown into an unknown wilderness and trying to figure out how to survive, how to get through, navigate this uncertain journey that we are all in. So, how do you cope? How do you survive? What is that ultimate wilderness guide that teaches us and helps us not only to survive but to thrive in our uncertain journey that we are in and beyond? Well, let's look at what we can learn from the people who were in a similar situation, the Israelites, the Exodus wilderness journey. I mean, it's a different part of the world and also a different time zone, but there are a lot of things similar in common with the people, Israelites people in their Exodus journey. So let's just reframe our situation to that of Israelites in times of Exodus. Their wilderness journey. Now, first, let me give you a little bit of a historical background, this Exodus event, the background, so that we have a little bit of something to go with This Exodus event happened like approximately like 3,500 years ago. So like about kind of ancient times. So about 4,000 years ago, a group of the band of 70 or so people, family members, led by their patriarch Joseph. You all know Joseph with that colorful coat and all. Okay, you've seen that. What's that? You've seen that theater, right? So with his 11 brothers' families and moving to the land of Egypt. And they lived there for about 400 years, just over 400 years. And has now increased to a population of over 1 million people, probably much more than 1 million within that period of time. So this band of immigrants, refugees, flourished and filled the land, became numerous and powerful in that host nation, which was good, but not so good with the host country, host nation, because that sort of kind of worried our new king of Egypt. He thought, what if they revolt and take the side of our enemies? What if they decide to leave the land? Who do all the hard work of building the empire? We can't let that happen. So he decided to put them to labor, or harsh labor, treating them like slaves, making their lives miserable. So here we see the separation of race, probably the very first separation of race, like this segregation and discrimination and treatment. Two different levels, Egyptians and the Israelites, right over here. So that was bad for the immigrants, Israelites, but also ultimately bad for the host nations. You all know what happened later on, right? Plague after plague after plague. So lesson number one is don't treat the immigrants and refugees badly. There will be consequences later. I will not go on to that more than that. Anyway, so the Israelites began to cry out to their God, God, help us. And God heard their cry. And remember the covenant God made with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, their ancestors of faith. That God will be their God and they will be God's people. That God will bless them and make them numerous and to bring them back to a good and promising land. So God heard Israelites cry. So that's not good for the host nation. Good for the immigrants, Israelites, terrible for the host nation, because the last thing you want is to wake up God from her beauty nap. Okay? It's to make God angry. For God is coming. For crying out loud, what is all this crying about? What's going on with your children? So God heard. So God took control and sent God's servant Moses to Egypt to confront King of Egypt, to demand him to let God's people go. And the king didn't listen. Why? Because he was stubborn, like mule. He was stubborn. So he tested God. Why? Just because he was king, right? And for that, God brought punishment upon king's land and his people. God said, oh yeah, you test me, so I will. So king resisted much more, which was bad, but eventually he gave in, couldn't stand against God's power. So I guess in a way, kind of side note is that you've got to learn your lessons early and smart enough early. If not, you lose your most cherished thing. What did he lose? Well, his firstborn. So the king said to Moses, go away, you and your people. So began the great Exodus. So that's sort of kind of brief summary leading up to the Exodus event, to covering the chapters 1 to 12, the book of Exodus, and a little bit of my comments, which you can dismiss because that's not that important. So this is what we read on Exodus chapter 12, verses 51. It says, that very day the Lord brought the Israelites out of the land of Egypt, company by company, tribe by tribe. And now this is important before we go any further. The Exodus event was all God's doing from the very beginning till the end. From the moving out of the Egypt into the wilderness and into the promised land, we're all led and guided by God. And that's important for us to remind ourselves. You see, God promised a long time ago, inscribed into the heart of God, in the form of covenant, to bring the Israelites out of foreign land into the promised land. God remembers the promise that God has made. And in God's own time, God carries out God's promise. God is God of covenant. So that's the overarching theme in the book of Exodus that runs throughout the entire Exodus journey and runs throughout the entire history of Israelites, and fully revealed with the coming of God's Son, Jesus Christ, and through the formation of the early church and throughout the history of God's people. That God fulfills God's promise God made with God's people. God is God of covenant. And that's important for us to hold on to. So we need to remember and remind ourselves that God is a God of covenant, that God would never abandon us, never leave us alone in our misery, that God always fulfills God's covenant He made with us. And this is critical for us to remind ourselves in the midst of our pandemic crisis, as we journey ourselves in this pandemic wilderness that we find ourselves in. You see, the steps that we take and the journey we take are only one step, one journey among the countless of steps and journeys of God's people took in the history and will take in the future. And having this broader view will give us proper perspective in our situation today and months and years to come in our life journey. Yes, God led us from the beginning, and God will continue to lead us according to God's promise, that we are part of God's covenant story. So that's the sort of overarching theme and thread we need to be anchored and hold on to as we journey through our pandemic wilderness and beyond. So if you only capture that, if you only hold on to that, it's okay. If you forget everything else, just hold on to that, and that's great. You can just take a nap and you can just go to washroom break. Okay, I'm gonna go to washroom break. Okay, I'm back. So how was the Exodus journey, wilderness journey like? Well, it was a long journey, and it began in hurry. The Exodus journey took the Israelites 40 years. It was a marathon, not a dash. And also, the Israelites had only 1 day to pack and move out of the land of Egypt. In 1 day's notice, hurry, hurry, no time to waste. So much so that they didn't even have time to fully cook their bread for the journey. Now that's hurrying things up a lot. Hurry, hurry. Now, of course, the Bible says they had time to plunder, emptying out Egyptians before they were to move out. So they went around the Egyptian household and asked for gold, silver, and clothes for the journey. And the Egyptians gave everything away they asked for, as long as they leave right away. They just couldn't wait to get rid of them. So they said, everything you want, we'll give it to you. Just go away. So they plundered the Egyptians. They emptied them out. Now, maybe it felt really good for them, sort of taking revenge of all this slavery for 400 years and harsh treatment the Israelites received. Maybe they felt good about it. I mean, it was allowed, that's what the Bible says, allowed. So many Israelites plundered, emptied the Egyptian household. But then, this act of plundering did not end well later. Remember what happened to the Israelites when Moses was on the Mount of Zion and receiving the tablets containing 10 commandments, the most defining moment in that whole wilderness journey. What were they doing? They were on the valley right there. They were at the bottom of the mountain. They were making an idol, a golden calf. And where do you think they got the gold from? Not from in the wilderness. They got the gold they plundered from Egyptians, were used as the main source to make idol to replace God. Just because it is allowed, it's not always good, especially plundering, robbing. And of course, all the items they plundered from Egyptians became a heavy burden on their wilderness journey. You see, the Israelites did not realize that Exodus journey was a long journey, not a short walk in the park or weekend wilderness family camping, but 40 years living in a wilderness as a nomad. I mean, you can carry as much as you want if you are, let's say, if you're going on a family weekend and camping on a wilderness with your RV and all that, and that's like, wilderness family camping, that's okay. You can pack as much as you can. So this is what happens with the people who are on a family weekend camping, wilderness camping out there. I've seen people packing a lot of stuff in their RV for weekend wilderness camping, just 3 days, and they're packing like entire household items, like from boat, from bicycles, from motorcycle, from fishing tackles, water sports and tubes, and month worth of groceries, and that is not even including 3 children and grandparents together, with 3 dogs and cat, all of that together in one huge RV. That's modern weekend family camping, yeah. One of my nephews does that every summer. His definition of weekend camping trip. He lives in a town called Wandering River in Alberta. Have you heard of that place? Wandering, W-A-N-D-E-R, Wandering River. Anyway. But the Exodus journey was not a weekend family camping trip. It was a huge mass departure. More than 1 million of people moving. Just imagine that the entire city of Edmonton moving out in one day, mostly walking on a carriage and hurrying. It was like one heck of mess, M-E-S-S, mess. When the city of Fort McMurray was evacuated, the fire, remember that fire? And took them like a week to escape with police escort. So think about 10 times the size, and all of them were either walking, riding on a donkey, on a carriage, and think about the heavy load. It would probably took them like a good month to have everyone came out of Egypt. Literally, it's not possible in one day. So the cutoff line was when Moses separated the sea, right? What sea was that? Is it a... It was a Red Sea. I knew. I just was testing you. That's all. Okay. So it's a Red Sea. So that was like a cut-off line, and the Egyptian soldiers are chasing after them. You've seen that movie, right? 10 Commandments, right? I mean, the Exodus was one massive escape, more like a stampede. That was what was happening, and I really don't think everyone made it to cut-off line. I mean, just think about it. So the ones who were left behind, well, they were the ones who were slow, right? Most like the ones who overplundered the Egyptians, dragging their heavy load. They probably were the ones who got left behind. The Bible doesn't say, but you can just use your imagination. And we don't know what happened to them. The Bible doesn't say, but you can guess what would have happened, okay? So, who made it to the other side? The ones who packed light. So travel with less, like carry only the essential items. So that's the title of today's talk, sermon, and we're about to finish here. But let me just go on, just touch a bit more. So number one wilderness survival tip is that know that your wilderness life journey is not a dash, but not even a picnic in the park, not even a weekend family camping trip, but more like going on a long wilderness journey. How long? 40 years. 40 years long. That's the length of lifespan for many who came out of the land of Egypt. They didn't know then, that they were not going to make it to the other side through the Jordan River. But 40 years, if you came out 20 years old, 40 years in the wilderness, you would be 60, and a good age to die in that time. Right? So first generation did not even make it. 40 years lifespan, second generation made it. In other words, you are on a wilderness journey called life. And it's a long journey, a marathon, not a dash. Number one rule is to pack light and carry only essential items. And that's how you will also thrive in this pandemic wilderness journey that we are in right now. So let me come back to that. Let's come back to the question that I posed you at the beginning of the worship service. The key question that we need to just hold on to and we need to struggle ourselves is, what essential items will you pack and carry on your pandemic wilderness journey and beyond? In other words of asking is that yourself is that always is that, what is that one thing or a few essential things that I cannot live without in my wilderness journey? So I went to Costco 2 weeks ago to buy my Starbucks coffee beans. French roast, dark roast. I only had 2 days of coffee beans left brewed at home, so I was in panic. I was desperate. I was really in panic. So I went to Costco. Couldn't get in, line up to enter the store was like 200 meters long, too long. So I was sort of kind of debating myself. I said, is coffee essential? Yes, of course, for me. Is it essential to drink Starbucks coffee, French roast? So I was kind of stuck there, And later on, it took me a while, but eventually and gradually I decided, well, no. So we left the store, Costco. And I've been brewing and drinking this unknown coffee bean from I don't know where. It's just nowhere near as good as a French roast. And so not so happy for the last 2 weeks. 2 days ago, we went to Costco and we just waited for 30 minutes and then we were able to buy 2 bags. So I'm happy now. So what else is essential? Coffee for me is essential. What else is essential for me? Well, rice, like essential for Koreans. Like we have a lot of rice, like steamed rice. So I prefer sticky rice, but any rice will do. Okay, and yes, kimchi is essential food item. Sue happened to make 3 large jars of kimchi like about 3 weeks ago. So that's good for next 2 months. So 3 food items I cannot live without: steamed rice, kimchi, and coffee. And I can survive on those for a long time, no problem. So what is the most essential items that you cannot live without in your own pandemic wilderness journey and beyond? So what did Israelites take with them on their journey? The bones of their ancestors. What? The bones of Joseph. The bones of Joseph. The very first thing Moses took with him as he departed the land of Egypt was the bones of Joseph. So chapter 13, verse 19, it goes like this. Moses took the bones of Joseph with him because Joseph had made the Israelites swear on oath. He had said, God will surely come to your aid and that you must carry my bones up with you from this place. The bones of Joseph, the bones of your ancestors. These are the symbol of their faith DNA. Their faith that carried them, their faith that carried them since their migration to the land of Egypt, to their exodus wilderness, and to the land of promised land. It's the symbolic of their faith. They were anchored in their faith of Abraham, the God of Abraham, God of Isaac, God of Jacob, God of Joseph, is God of Israelites. The bones of ancestors contain the promise, the covenant, the faithfulness of God that stretched all the way from the beginning of time to their extra journey and beyond. You see, the Israelites were severely tested in their wilderness journey, and many of them did not make it through, not because they were lacking any material stuff, that they were weak in one area where it counted the most in a wilderness journey, the toughness of their mind. In other words, their faith. The lack of faith. Over and over again, their faithfulness to God, to their leaders, to one another, was the main thing that tested them. Over and over again, the essential one thing that many of them lacked and failed, the lack of their faith. So what is that one thing we cannot live without in our pandemic, wilderness journey, and beyond? Well, it's our faith, folks. It's our faith. Our faith and faithfulness to God, to one another, and to ourselves as well. Don't forget to take the bones of your ancestor, your faith, with you on your wilderness journey. The one item that you cannot live without. As we carry our faith in God, remembering the faith of our ancestors, and anchored in God's faithfulness, that no matter what happens in our wilderness journey, we know that we are not alone, that God is in control of our journey, and that we will never be afraid. Take the bones of your ancestors with you. Your faith, the most essential item that you cannot live without. Your faith. And I will speak a little more about this next Sunday, but in ending, I want to end my talk a bit long today. So this is more like a homework, if you could think about next week. Identify one item that reminds you of your faith, of God's faithfulness, a symbol of your faith. That symbolizes the bones of your ancestor, your faith. And I will show you next week what early Christian symbol was, symbol of their faith. They kept them going in their harsh persecution that they had to go through. And there was one image that really kept them all the way through, and it's not cross. If you can, so I guess kind of homework for all of us, but in a way, if you can actually find some solution, answers, let me know, comment, that would really help us. So in our wilderness journey, we need to pack light and carry only the essential items. Take the bones of your ancestors with you. Your faith will carry you all the way. Amen. So I have a few announcements for this Sunday. So quite a few of you have been receiving our news and notes through our Knox Church. And there are 3 items that I like to highlight just for your information, but also for us to think about much more. It's that most of you have been receiving our phone tree ministry calls. We have a dedicated number of people from our Knox Church been calling our Knox family members for the last whole month, weekly basis, ongoing basis. So just to check in and if there's any need that we want to mobilize our mobility team to do that. So it's a part of what we do in try to connect everybody and trying to make sure that people don't slip through the crack through this time. So I just want to mention that, and I just want to raise the team leaders who's been calling this. Like their commitment and dedication have been hugely appreciated, and they are continuing to do that. So thank you very much for our phone tree ministry branch leaders. Thank you. As you know, that as we have moved into our online services, and there's 2 things happening. While our physical ministry and church services has diminished, our online ministry and service have picked up more people than ever before, which is good. And you probably be able to see the statistics, how many people are watching on Sunday and logging into our church website on day-to-day basis. And there are people coming, logging in and watching this service from almost even from the eastern area, like Toronto and outside of country as well. So we're reaching quite a lot of people. So, and we want to provide more enhancing service and ministry through this online, not just on church service, but also through our church website. As you know, a church website has replaced, the ministry in church website has replaced physical church in that sense, but it's reaching out more people. So there are 2 things that I like to encourage you to do that, to provide and to communicate this to more wider people. Number 1 is to encourage your family members and friends and asking them to visit our church website and to call them on Sunday morning to worship together at 10:30 Sunday morning. And then we will have more people worshiping together and help them along the way too. And there are another one that I like us to think about. So one tangible way for us to expand our ministry through this online is that after you finish your worship service today, is to hit the subscribe button to our Knox YouTube channel. And if you can actually press like and leave your comment, more subscriptions that we have, the more ministry and better ministry we can provide. For your information, we have this video instructions about how to hit the subscribe button, and it's in our video will be on our church website. So if I encourage you to hit, before you leave your church worship service and go back to our church, the YouTube channel, and hit YouTube subscription button. And lastly, I just want to thank you for your continuing contribution to our ministry, even in times of crisis like right now. Now, if you are wondering how to donate, there are 4 tangible ways to do that. Mail in is one way, or drop off through our church mailbox. Or you can switch your weekly giving offering to PAR, which I'm doing on a monthly basis. And also one other area is using donation button in our church website. You can just press the donation button. Our finance team is always checking just to see who have offered. So once again, I thank you very much for your continuing support in Knox ministry. So let us pray, shall we? Oh God, we give you thanks for you are continuing to bless us even in this difficult time. So in faith and gratitude, we offer our blessings to your ministry. May the gift we offer be used to increase your love and ministry in the world. Lord, in times like this, we can easily be overwhelmed with fear and uncertainty. and can quickly become too selfish and looking out for ourselves. But you have kept us in your presence and confidence, that you have strengthened us and encouraged us to be more generous, loving, and caring. So we give you thanks. We give you thanks for your ever-present assurance through our actions of loving our neighbors and leaders and courageous, committed people in every area. We give you thanks that even in times like this, you have reminded us of your faithfulness, the faithfulness of our community, our family, and our friends. Reminded us that we are not alone. And we also offer our prayers to you this morning, especially for all those who are grieving over the loss of their loved ones through the shootings last week in Nova Scotia, and still in shock and in disbelief. As we pray for them, as we also grieve with them, Lord. Be with them and comfort them and surround them with your compassion. And we also continue to pray for them, pray for the others in our church, those who are going through hardships from pandemic crisis, those who are isolated, who are sick, who are lonely, and who are mentally weak and compromised, those within Knox community and those who are worshiping together, and for all those people who work tirelessly in curbing the infection, keeping people healthy and well, who are putting their health and life at risk. Strengthen them, nurture them, protect them, and keep us all together in your care as we journey together in this wilderness period. Keep us to be faithful to you and with one another. In the name of the one who taught us to pray, our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Okay, let's sing Will Your Anchor Hold. Savior's love. Okay, everyone, let's go on a wilderness journey with God. My bag is packed, my load is light, and I'm ready now, and so are you. So let us enter into our wilderness journey grounded in our faith in God, knowing that God is faithful always. Amen.